And guys, welcome back to another miniature showcase. I was going to hold off on this video, however, I did see on the Warhammer the Old World Facebook group that someone painted a lovely Ogre Kingdom's army, and it looked absolutely amazing, and it was basically what I was going to do, was to create a whole Old Hammer army using the famous Jess Goodwin C23 Ogre range. These miniatures were produced in 1985 through 1986, and it is probably the gold standard for what an ogre should look like in the world of fantasy. Throughout the years, these miniatures have been seen through countless personal armies. I have seen whole ogre armies created from these miniatures, to them being sprinkled throughout Realm of Chaos armies, to even Empire armies. And the reason I want to talk about them is not only am I super excited to have all of them, I'm actually going to probably use some of them for my Araby army. So this is a pseudo Araby army update, but at the same time I want to showcase the beautiful ogres and kind of show in depth each one. So this video might be quite long because I want to kind of focus on each of the ogres. If I'm not mistaken, there should be 16 right in front of you, and again, all produced by the master sculptor Jess Goodwin. So we're going to start with the most famous ogre, the Ogre Captain. So guys, up first is the Ogre Captain Hothrog. I am so sorry if I butchered that pronunciation. I just have no idea how to pronounce it. I wanted to start with this miniature as he is, if not, just like the Great Spine Dragon in the last video, the Ogre Captain Hothrog is probably the most iconic ogre in all of Warhammer. And maybe someone can find another ogre. All I knew growing up was this was the model you wanted in your army, and I think if you look at Instagram or even just type in Old Hammer Ogres, the amount of times this guy has been painted and even converted shows that he is somehow just a whole leg above any ogre sculpted. I think that comes from the menacing pose he has, to all of the amazing details. You have what I always loved. It looked like the evil sun on the old Citadel primers. That's what his little faceplate looks like, and with the sword coming out of the broken sheath, to all of the beautiful armor plating. I think this miniature really does deserve all of the praise and love it gets, just because he fits in any army, you know. I think that's something about Old Hammer that can't be beaten with new miniatures. It's the simplicity. Like when you look at this guy, it's such a basic pose, but it commands so much respect. And I do appreciate how Games Workshop, for their current Ogre Tyrant, to me it felt like they leaned upon the more natural pose and not so action-packed. I think ogres look the best when they're in this relaxed pose rather than something overly dynamic. So this is the Ogre Captain, one of the best miniatures in the range. If you like painting ogres, I highly encourage you to get him. I was going to use this for my Ogre Tyrant, but he actually might be put into my Araby army just because the cap, I'm a little bit tempted. I don't want to remove the shark fin spike thing on top, but if the top was a bit more flat with a spike, sorry about that. I paused the video. As I was saying, if you removed the head crest and you put a spike, he would perfectly look like one of the talisman Saracens I have in my Araby army. So I need to ponder upon this miniature, as I really don't want to mess him up too much. Worst case, I have to hunt down one more, but I've been looking at him and I really want to use him for my Araby. So up next is another very famous ogre. Up next is the Ogre Renegade Scrag the Slaughterer. So he has a current quote-unquote interpretation of him. He has the giant cauldron. his arms were cut into stumps, but the original 1985 Scrag was just an ogre renegade. He's in this beautiful full plate chaos armor with this dog collar, a brutal looking axe, and a very mean and just amazing characterful face. You can see a nasty scar going across. This miniature I know has been used in many Realm of Chaos armies, and if you know the old blog, I think it's Realm of Chaos 80s or something like that, I grew up seeing this ogre in his army. So it is a very great looking Chaos ogre, and if you play Warriors of Chaos, I highly encourage you guys to get at least one of them to be a unit champion. Or again, this whole entire range I should preference is perfect for man-eaters solely because they look so distinct and they look like they came all across the old world. Me wanting to use them as an entire ogre army, it's gonna be cool. However, I think I'm a little bit distracted with other projects, but I just wanted to share these such badass ogres. So this is Scrag. Not much more to say about him because he is, I would say, pretty commonly seen, and he isn't so forgotten in the long catalog of Citadel miniatures. So up next is a miniature you've actually seen painted on the channel. So up next, guys, is the Ogre Shaman, and you definitely recognized him from my, I think, painting update a few months ago. This is the miniature I painted, and he is blue solely because my older brother Younghyun, he painted his Ogre Kingdoms about 9 to 10 years ago in this frost theme. And like I mentioned many times, both my brothers were so influential into me playing Warhammer that I wanted to basically pay a homage to all the games I played with him. And if he ever does come back from his military service, we can play more Warhammer. The only difference you can note now is that Batwing on his ear for this one. This guy came slightly damaged, so I just put a metal Batwing in his hair, so it looks like he's a real shaman. But a really beautiful miniature. I think we can kind of focus on my painted one as the details are a bit easier to see. So just a lot of nice trinkets, like a mushroom, a jade emblet, or I made it jade, this huge dagger, and I just love the amount of detail this miniature has. He can fit into any army, and I would probably use this guy as a fire belly or use him as any other butcher or caster, just because I think he fits the bill pretty good. He's just a wizard. So, but yeah, not much more to cover about this miniature. Just I like the pose, and honestly, if you tweak a few hand positioning and add something, he could easily turn from this wizard-esque shaman into more of a warrior. So up next will be another ogre that I do believe not many will recognize. Up next is the Ogre Mutant, and this guy's a little bit harder to come by, I would say, in regards to the Jess Goodwin range of ogres. This guy and the Ogre Captain are the ones that you might have a little bit of difficulty finding. I'd say it's not the matter of price you're gonna pay, it's a matter of who actually has one available for sale. And I love the Ogre Mutant. I was definitely going to use him as a Gorger because when you look at him, he bloody looks like a Gorger. He has the spikes, he has the physique, he has the wild, untamed, unnatural vitality that you read in the lore of the Gorgers. As you know, Gorgers in the lore from the old 8th edition book, they were thrown into like the mountains, and they ate a lot of warpstone and became quite corrupted and feral, and would just feast upon anything they saw, and the ogres would corral them for war. And actually Scrag buffed the Gorgers in 8th edition. But back to the Ogre Mutant, he is beautiful. You could honestly use this model as a Chaos Ogre as well. He is a mutant after all. Really lovely model, and I love all the different spikes and spines protruding out of him. Just a great miniature, and I do apologize about the paint. I've been painting some miniatures. But yeah, here is the Ogre Mutant. We still have about, I think, 12 more Ogres to cover. So up next is the Ogre Executioner Gutlag, and he is, I believe, based, or they used this miniature to make, I think, the 8th edition Ogre character. He had a giant scythe and he had a giant hood. He was an executioner as well. I want to say this guy probably served as inspiration, as he has the same motifs. He's a headsman, he has the hood. Really lovely miniature. I know this is another well-known Just Goodwin Ogre. A lot of lovely detail, and with the clothing he has, I think that's why he is so often seen in armies. He just fits into any army. He could be in a Bretonnian army, he could be in an Empire army for sure, a Chaos army, an Ogre army. So he just has such a ambiguous look that it works really well. I do like the difference. His teeth are like, he has like a squig type of like mouth or jawline, which I think is quite interesting. A lot of lovely details again. I like the armor. I think the armor is, it could be painted as leather, and I think that's probably the intent with this metal spiked belt. But really cool miniature, and really lucky to have gotten him. I think he is amazing, and probably this miniature and a couple others I will not touch. I think they are perfect the way they came. So let's go on to the next Ogre. So up next is the Ogre Mercenary Matog. He is a pit fighter slash just mercenary, and I was going to use this miniature as, or in my Araby army as well. Like I mentioned with Sheikh Yadash and his slave slash eunuch slash bodyguard unit, this guy kind of fits that corsair slash, you know, gladiator feel, and I think he perfectly fit into my force. He's one miniature that I probably wouldn't sculpt anything else. I think he has enough cloth that I can paint it and make him match my Araby. Just really lovely details. I like how the foot is missing to get this very brutal looking peg leg. The little hooked hand and the eye patch is pretty cool. So this one's a more simple model, I think, but again, just because it's simple doesn't mean it isn't great. So lovely miniature. I think this is one that is not too hard to come by as well. I've seen him floating around a lot on trade sites and eBay, so if you want this guy, pretty easy to get your hands on him. Let's move on to the next Ogre. We still have a bit more than half to go. Here we have the Ogre Berserker. This one I won't cover into too much detail. I think he is, again, a great model, but not a lot to discuss further. I think I do like the chained like mace weapon and the club. Interesting to note that he has like a mutation of a horn coming out of his head. So if you play Warriors of Chaos, this miniature is probably one you would want to snag up, solely because that mutation already, I would say, designates him as a worshipper of chaos. But really lovely model, and I guess if you also, on the flip side, if you don't like the horn, it's really easy to slice that off, file it down, and now he's just a normal looking ogre. But really cool detail, and I just noticed, oh god, I just noticed his feet all jacked up, like he has one clawed toe coming out, and this one has two. Yep, so definitely a chaos ogre. Do not let his one horn deceive you. He is an agent of chaos. So let's move on to the next ogre. And here we have the chaos. Did I just say chaos? The Ogre Thug. This is the third miniature I was planning to use for my Araby. Like with the Ogre Captain Hothrog, or Hothyog, he has the look I want. He has the fur-lined cap, the helmet with the spike, and I'm sure of my color scheme, this guy would look just like a Saracen. So minus the weapon is pretty brutal looking, but he is an ogre. So this is the third model I was planning to use for my Araby. I just have to think about a unit that I could use these miniatures as. And I guess now that we're looking at him, this is what I mean. I want to put this spike on the captain's helmet, and I think he would also look perfectly like he's from Araby. But this model I'm very fond of. I like the pose. Again, simple. It has a dynamic pose where, you know, he is clubbing someone, but it isn't overdone, and that's why I appreciate the old Hammer miniatures. The poses are in such a way that they do convey motion and action, but it isn't like in your face where there's too much detail. Some of the poses, even modern miniatures, can look a little bit silly, but I think in this case, for Jess Goodwin's ogres, he really did manage to get each pose to be as natural as possible. So let's move on to the next ogre. For this ogre, he is the Ogre Bounty Hunter, and I think his sword is completely bent. I did not notice that. What a strange ogre. Not to say it's bad, just very odd. So the long sword ends in a flat stub. I've seen some swords like this in real life, but not sure what the purpose is. He kind of looks like Guts from Berserk in this giant sword. Face-wise, I guess unpainted, even in the original metal, it's hard to see a little bit. He has an eye patch, his eyes back there, a huge chin, and just adorned in chainmail and trinkets and weapons. Just amazing detail, but a little bit, this is one I'd say a little bit, not busy is the word. Maybe, I guess it would be busy or cluttered. If the colors weren't chosen correctly, I feel like he out of all the ogres would blend in too much with everything that's going on. Again, not to say he's a bad model. I mean, he has this cool head he just sliced off of, but for me personally, this is one that I think in the Jess Goodwin range, if you didn't want to collect them all, you could pass over this guy, unless you really do like this huge greatsword. But I'm still happy to have him. I think he'll fit perfectly in an Iron Gut unit, or again in any other mercenary units you want to run him as. So let's move on to the next ogre. And now we have an official Chaos Ogre model. This guy is armed to the teeth. He is covered in chaos plating. He has the 8-pointed star here, a very blunt looking sword, and the 2 horns. You can tell this guy is fully mutated. A lot of great painters I've seen on the old Hammer group and even Instagram paint the skin in like demonic colors. You just go to town with this guy because he is basically a giant chaos warrior. That's what it is. And this one has great detail. Like, look at the extra, I guess, like filigree or the wings on the boot, the straps holding the plate. This guy is honestly badass, and if you have chaos ogres, you better run this guy at least as a unit champion, because you know what, let me get Scrag. I know Scrag is more iconic, but this chaos ogre looks like he'd beat Scrag any day with his sharp edges. And I like the difference of armor. Even though he's a renegade, his armor is more elegant besides the dog collar. He definitely looks like he belongs in the Empire, and this guy, full chaos infused. So let's move on to the next ogre. The next ogre actually is slightly damaged. His foot came off, and I can easily just pin that back. But this is the Oriental ogre. He looks very, very cool. He would fit perfectly in my Nippon army. He has that Oni looking face with the horns coming out. If I really wanted to, you could actually paint the face as a mask. You see in a lot of old Japan folklore and of course shows, but this one is actually a very favorite model of mine. I like the armor plating. After I painted the Talisman Samurai, I've grown to appreciate this look of of armor. It is time consuming to paint, but it is quite enjoyable. I like the little detailed shoulder, I guess like pauldron or shield on his side. Very lovely. The weapon choice is one that I would debate though. Maybe I would change it, but it does fit his nature. So he'd be like striking down upon his foe. So very cool. Again, this is the Oriental Ogre. Fits perfectly into a Nippon army, and that's the other army I'm kind of working on, but haven't fully got all the pieces yet for it. So let's move on to there's 5 more ogres left, I believe. And here we have the Ogre Warrior Priest. This one I do like, but at the same time, because we had the Ogre Shaman before, I'm always 50-50 of which is the better looking wizard. If you remove this staff head and put like an axe head, he could easily pass for another Chaos Ogre, or even a Beastman Ogre. You know, he has the horns coming out, he's in raggedy clothing, one arm is completely covered in bandages, so he looks like a renegade as well. But he is supposed to be a warrior priest, but really cool. And I think the interesting part, we're this far into the video, that you can see from all the ogres, Jess Goodwin put a lot of like love and passion into making each ogre so distinct. Like you can clearly see each ogre gets influences from different parts of the old world. Again, this guy would be a probably chaos follower solely because of the horns coming out of his head. Maybe you can even question he came from Albion, just because to me he gives me that Celtic vibes a little bit. But yeah, so here is the Ogre Warrior Priest. We have, I think, 4 more ogres to go. I think just for how long I've been talking for, I'm gonna cover both these ogres. So this is the Ogre Gladiator, if I'm not mistaken, and I think this is just the Ogre Mercenary, another one. Both of these are actually quite lovely miniatures. He, I know, has been used in a lot of Mordheim warbands because he is a pit fighter or a gladiator, and he's been used in Blood Bowl quite often. He has a good pose for it. He has like the look of a Blood Bowl player, and I love the mohawk. So really cool miniature here. I could also use this for Araby, but I think 3 ogres in my Araby army is more than enough. And then this guy here, I want to say he's my least favorite. Something about I think it's the hairdo. I think actually the pose is simple and I like it, but the hairdo, he kind of looks like, I don't know. I'm not the biggest fan of this ogre in particular, but yeah, maybe if given a different helmet, he would look cool. But I mean, I'm not trying to detract from the miniature. Again, it is beautifully sculpted. The pose is fantastic. It's just maybe preference. This hairdo doesn't look like it belongs on an ogre, if that makes sense. But I like the detail, the satchel he has, the nub here. A couple of the ogres are meant to have shields, and I think it's funny because they came with the old tiny shields. So imagine this huge ogre with a small like swashbuckler shield over there. So let's do the last 2 ogres. And the last 2 ogres, sorry about that, is the Ogre Warlord and the Ogre Mercenary Marauder Bandit. This guy here, I actually like. He looks pretty, sounds weird, he looks pretty cute. He like stole a small bag of probably gold or food, and he has a club to threaten people with. I like the clothing choice, and again, all the face details. I think this is why I'm excited to paint these ogres in the near future, just because I think you can have a lot of fun experimenting with tones. I like the little ale he has in the back. Now that's the one thing I'm torn about. I don't know if I should make all of the skin tone the same, or because I have my my blueberry boy here, should I make them more fantastical? I'm not entirely sure yet. But let's go on to the last ogre. This is the Ogre Warlord, and honestly, I could say he could fit in. He could also fit into the Araby army, maybe even a Nippon force because of the clothing choice. If anything, he kind of looks like the old Dogs of War Hobgoblin unit, the Khan or something like that. He just has a very, I guess, like Mongolian vibe a little bit. slash, like, some Turkish vibes too. But really lovely miniature. I'm glad we're ending it on this ogre. Just a pretty badass sculpt, and I like the pose again. He was damaged a bit as well. Not to blame that. I can easily just fill the gap there. But that's all the ogres, guys. But yeah, guys, that is the entire C23 Jess Goodwin ogre range. I hope this was a little bit informative, or at least, if anything, gave you a closer inspection of what all the ogres look like. I probably will get to them in, again, the near future. You will at least see 3 of them being used for my Araby army, which I'm really excited for. But again, really happy with the showcase. I hope you guys are enjoying the videos, and the next one I do promise will be an Araby army update.